Alright, so this week we're going to revisit getting creative with textures or patterns here inside Photoshop, in that I have a texture here, and you can consider this with almost any texture you have. Look through your folders of textures or files or whatever, and look at textures you might have looked at in the past and gone, well, it's not that interesting, I don't think I'm ever going to use this for anything. Well, don't be, and I've said this before in the past, don't be too quick to dismiss something just because it immediately looks a little bit bad. You know, by applying some creative thinking and techniques, you can turn something that's relatively boring and useless and seemingly useless into something really interesting. So here I have this circuit board, and after playing around with it, I discovered that if you make a pattern out of this in a very interesting way, it can turn into a very interesting design element. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and into the image size of this image, and I'm going to go ahead and make the height 4 inches. So it's roughly 6 by 4 inches, and I'm going to go ahead and make it 100 pixels per inch. So it's 6 by 4 at 100 pixels. Now I'm going to go ahead and make a new document. And with this, since I'm going to build this as a pattern, I'm going to go ahead and make this 12 inches because this image is 6 inches wide. So I'm going twice as wide, and then 8 inches tall. Since it's 4 inches tall, I want it to be twice as tall. And I'm going to go ahead and leave the resolution at 100 pixels per inch. We'll go ahead and click OK. And there we have it. So now I'm going to go ahead and take that circuit board image and just drag and drop it over to this working document. Now, let's go ahead and minimize this. So I'm going to take this and just go ahead and place it in the upper left corner of this layout. So I'm going to go ahead and drag a duplicate of this layer. If you hold down the Option key on Mac, Alt on Windows, you'll see the little double arrow show up. And I'm just going to add the Shift key as I click and drag, and it's going to drag a duplicate to the right. And if you go all the way over, it should snap to the edge, just like that. Boom. Now, go under the Edit menu and go down to Transform and choose Flip Horizontal. And then you'll get this mirror image in there. And what you're getting is a more symmetrical pattern based on that circuit board, rather than just the one image you had that was mostly very unappealing. So now with that, I'm going to go ahead and merge these two layers together. I'm just going to press Command or Control E, and that makes that one layer. I'm going to do the same thing we did a moment ago by duplicating the layer, but this time we're going down. So I'm Option, Shift dragging, and we'll bring that element down to the bottom. Again, it will snap to the edge, and then we'll go under Edit again, Transform, and this time choose Flip Vertical. And now we're getting a little bit more interesting pattern here, rather than what we started with, which is that one section of a circuit board. But because we are able to take it and flip it and generate a pattern out of it in this kind of mirrored fashion, we're getting a more complete looking circuit board, which can be used for almost anything. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and make it an interesting background. So again, I'm going to go ahead and merge this layer together, and there we've got interesting thing happening with the background. So I'm going to go ahead and take the color out, because all I'm interested in really is the pattern. And this is what's interesting about textures, is that you don't always have to use it as it is. And in the most cases, the color isn't necessary. So I'm going to go ahead and take the color information out by going under Image Adjustments, Desaturate, and there we go. So I'm going to turn the layer off for the moment, because I'm going to go ahead and select the background layer and go ahead and give it a black fill. And then I'm going to add a color element in here. Now there's a couple ways you can go about doing this, and I'm going to show you a way I like that gives me the ability to change the color anytime I want. I'm going to go ahead and use my gradient tool. Let's go ahead and grab the gradient, and I'm going to use the radial foreground to transparent. Since I want radial, I just want to add random circles around here. And let's go ahead and set it to white as our foreground color. So we're going from white to transparent with a radial gradient, and I'm going to go ahead and keep it on the background layer here, and then just add 2 or 3 good size gradients in here. There we go. Let's add one in the bottom here. There we go. So that's looking pretty interesting. Now I'm going to go ahead and add an adjustment layer, a hue saturation adjustment layer here, and then click on Colorize, and it's going to colorize that black, white, and gray background. And what I can do is just move this over to a color. So if I like green, for instance, for the moment, go ahead and use that. I'm going to go and reselect the layer containing my circuit board pattern, and then simply change its blend mode from normal to something like overlay. And it's going to blend that image and give me a very interesting looking blend of a background effect. So we can darken this image up a little bit here. Or darken the background layer so there's less white. So I'm just going to take the output level and drop it down a little bit here. There we go. So there's a little less white in there. But now you can see how that image is blending in a rather interesting way. Let's go ahead and add some different gradients on here. Let's actually start with a gray. So I'm going to do a gray to transparent gradient rather than white, and that'll just make it a little less blown out. There it is. There we go. So just add a few random gradients around here, and even if I want, you can go in here and add a layer mask to the texture layer and just use some random gradients to hide certain elements of that screened or that textured background there. So I'm getting a really interesting kind of background element here. And I can just go ahead and just add a text element if I want. We'll call this wired up. As opposed to word up. No. Anyway. So, simple text element. Obviously, you can do whatever you want here. I'm just adding a text element just so you can kind of see this in context. Let's just add a drop shadow here. And drop the opacity a little bit. Looking pretty good. But the point is that background. Again, using textures in a creative way. In looking at, go back to that original, what we started with was that very simple segment of a circuit board. And then being able to go in here and mirror it and create a very symmetrical, balanced background design, which we can use for whatever we want to use it for. And I encourage you to try this on a number of different images. When I first started playing with this, I easily tried it on so many different images. I got a little crazy with it. In fact, here's an image that, another texture I have. Let's go ahead and open that up. And it's just simply an elephant skin texture. And I thought it was very interesting. And by applying this very same technique I just showed you to this image, actually gave me a rather interesting result. If I open it up here, there you can see that one texture. Using the very same technique of flipping it around and then mirroring it just like that, gave me this very interesting texture here. And there's so many different possibilities. This could be a background element. I could use it as a texture on a 3D object. So many different things you can do by just reapproaching texture files that you might have looked at in the past and gone, that's very uninteresting. I'm not going to do anything with that. But perhaps by playing with some of these techniques, you can revive those old texture files in new and interesting ways.